Yeah, we wanted to do this webinar just to share with startups, with you and um, our great angels that we'll invite along this year within our community to share how can they grow their startups, how they can raise in this environment, how they can navigate this 2024, which is kind of bumpy and
Yeah.
unknown. Yeah, thank you for stepping up and contributing to the community.
Yeah.
Um, as a first question, and we'll have more questions from the that we gathered from the participants, but I have a couple of questions to start. Um, where do you think we are in this recession slash winter, tech winter? Are we
Yeah.
done? Are we kind of halfway through? What do you see in your startups going into 2024?
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't think anyone knows the answer. Anyone who tells you that they do is deluding themselves and lying. Um, but um, I'm seeing I think the best way to think about it is there's two sort of core elements that are maybe three. There's always three. So three core elements that are interplaying here. One is you have we got just crazy in terms of valuations during the ZIRP era. Money was free, and there was no place to put it, and so people invested in startups, and then more and more and more. And as a result, I mean, it was the easiest job in the world. I mean, everything went up. We were all running 50% plus IRR. We looked like geniuses. Like, look how smart we are. And like all good parties, it had to end, and it ended with a nice big boom. So one of the big issues we're facing right now, and what we've been facing for the last couple of years, is just a pricing mismatch, because startups had gotten used to, and they had built their cap tables, and they had built their P&Ls, and they had built their whole business based on free money and spending that money. And then suddenly the prices dropped by 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. And so when that happened, you know that caused a lot of pain. So everyone had to pull back. And so that kind of led to the second sort of dynamic, which is that as everyone in the industry pulled back, then there was a lot less SaaS software being bought. There was a lot less growth across the whole industry, and everyone suddenly hit a wall. And if you commingle that with like what Apple did with ATT and a bunch of other sort of wider secular shifts to the industry, that almost every startup hit a pretty significant wall in 2022. It's like, I mean, across the board, I'm invested in, almost 80 companies. And it was like everybody that summer hit a wall. It's like, full stop. And so then, the times got hard, and, the good entrepreneurs got to work and the bad entrepreneurs went into denial. And now what we've seen over the last, call it 12 months, a little more than that, 18 months since then, is we've seen the good entrepreneurs have right-sized their businesses, have cut their costs, have focused their energies, because they have a lot less capital to throw at a problem, and they need to be much, much more selective, where before they could do whatever they wanted. And they've reignited growth. And I'm seeing that in my portfolio. The best entrepreneurs are growing again, and they're not growing as fast, and the heyday things are not as drunk and wild as they were before, but they're growing again, and things are back to providing value to customers, delivering on that value, and then going and finding new customers and repeating. Pretty simple phenomenon. It doesn't matter how much capital you have in your cap table. You can, if you have a good product, you can do that every day, and that's what the best entrepreneurs are. The worst entrepreneurs, they're fighting to stay alive, and a lot of them are slowly going out of business, slowly ceasing operations. That said, there was so much capital around that a lot of VCs are continuing to pretend and extend. So they're like, it's just, the downturn's going to go away. We're going to be back to normal. Here's a bridge. And so not as many of those companies have washed through the system as we would all hope, but it's happening. And so that I think is a healthy system. And I think the third dynamic is there's a mindset shift, because it's not just the entrepreneurs, it's also the employees, it's also the partners, it's also everyone in the industry has to go from money is free, we can just, everything is easy, we can grow like crazy, to the way it always has been with startups. The startups are hard, cash is hard, like progress, traction, success is hard, and if you're not willing to work hard at the job, you're probably not going to do well. And that's taken time as well, because a lot of employees in particular had gotten used to the easy days, and they're like, I'm just going to kind of keep doing what I was doing, and we've had that takes time to work through. But I think we're making progress. So in terms of your second question, in terms of predictions, I'm seeing 2020 this year is better, substantially better. Things are improving. I'm seeing the log jam in the venture market is unfolding. Prices have come down. The price sort of bid ask spread has sort of like gotten much closer. And I'm not expecting any major changes. I think everyone should know that usually in these downturns, the down is an elevator straight down, and the up is an escalator. Slowly work your way up. We got to wait. We're going to have to grind our way back out of this again until we get drunk again, and then repeat the process. But for now, I'm hopeful that we should have a good, steady growth year, and things will be better.
Any specific advice you have for startups on the fundraising strategy this year? Any approaches you believe work in particular, let's say seed or Series A?
Yeah, so it all depends on the market. There's a lot of different markets. The AI market continues to be incredibly frothy, though largely for experienced entrepreneurs. I mean, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, the VCs, especially the big firms, have not been investing in their later stage rounds. They've not been writing B and C and D checks. They're sitting on a lot of capital. And so they've all come to play in the seed market to try to, put that capital to work, to pretend like they're being busy, to keep their staff busy. And so you're seeing, for experienced entrepreneurs who've done it before, you're seeing a lot of cash flowing into AI companies. Super duper frothy. If you're not one of the experienced entrepreneurs, it's like every other part of the market, it's a real struggle. Like I think you've got to basically focus on the core principles of startups. What product are you building that delivers differentiated value to your customers? And what I like to say is, like, until you can cold call someone at 9:00 at night on their cell phone, tell them what you're doing in one sentence, and instead of them saying, while they're putting their kid to bed, so really hard, and instead of them saying, fuck you, they're like, oh, I want to talk to you tomorrow. Until you can get to that point, you don't have anything. Like, startups are all about like a huge delta over the status quo, something that is so amazing that everybody is going to want to talk to you because you can change their life. So you start with the discovery of that. You got to go find that. And then you got to figure out how to deliver that in a repeatable way. And these are not easy things to do. So you focus on that. And then once you're in that, you'll find that it's a lot easier to raise capital, and the business is in a position that can be successful. If, in the old days, it was like, hey, I got an idea, and then people would throw money at you. Like, those days are over. Like, go back to the basics.
Geez, I'm just curious. We hire a lot of engineers right now, particularly last year, but this year a lot as well for AI startups, looking for ML or Python talent. Do you see any other sectors that is kind of a party go kind of scene besides AI?
I mean, crypto seems like it might be coming back. I'm not a crypto guy, but I had a nice dinner with a bunch of crypto people the other night, and it was lobster tails and Bollinger champagne. I mean, they were feeling frothy. Um, uh, let's see, is there anything else in a party right now? Maybe I'm not seeing it, but there might be some subsectors, some smaller sectors. But I'm averse to these parties, because these parties always are, the liars and the cheaters and the scammers do really well because they know they have nothing, and so they jump in, they make their money, and then they leave quickly. The people who are trying to build are in for a hard ride, because you start building in a boom market, and what I tell every entrepreneur is, like, boom markets are oftentimes not your friend. Because what that means is that every single competitor who could get funding is going to get funding, and a bunch of entrepreneurs are going to go into your market doing non-economic things to try to grow. So they're going to spend too much on their CAC. They're going to spend too much on their marketing. They're going to spend too much on all sorts of bullshit, which will make it much more difficult for you to execute. And there's going to be a lot more FUD in the market. There's going to be a lot more lying in the market. There's going to be a lot more just noise, which if you actually do have a good product that delivers real value, it's just like you have to fight through that. And it's just like, it really can be expensive. It can cause you a lot of dilution because you have to raise a lot of capital to try to keep up with that. And it's much better to have a great differentiated product when money's really hard to get, because that means you don't have any competitors. Usually the market is empty. There's no pretenders. It's just about delivering value, and you grow more slowly, but you end up owning a lot more of your company, and you're generally in a much better place competitively. So I personally prefer these markets for building companies.
What were the last 2 or 3 startups you invested in, and why? I mean, what was the logic? What do they do? Just out of curiosity, maybe you could share.
Yeah. So what is some recent checks? I've written a couple, but we haven't announced them yet. Yeah, my January, I had such a slow 2023. I mean, it was like I was probably down 70% in terms of capital deployment, which can be very disconcerting. Like, your job is to find new startups and invest in them, and you don't find any startups. You're like, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? But I recently invested in a company called Shovels.ai. So Shovels uses AI to go scan government documents. So like big repositories of paper permits, and then they extract that data using LLMs, and then they can basically then make it available to all sorts of startups via APIs. Super fun product. They're exciting. I did another one, which is really cool, called EchoMark. So EchoMark basically creates an invisible fingerprint on a document, personalized to whoever you send it to. So if you send somebody a sensitive document, it puts an invisible fingerprint on. Nobody can see it. I mean, it's literally invisible to the naked eye. But if they were to then share that document or take a picture of it, do anything with that document, it would be you could tell who got that document. So you can think about it for if you're the government, if you want to keep track of who's leaking your documents, you can be like, oh, we sent you this document and you leaked it. Go to jail. So super fun technology, uses a lot of the advances in AI to do some really interesting things. Super great founders. I'm really excited about them. I think they're going to do some cool stuff. And then I have a couple new ones, which we haven't announced yet, but I'm excited about. So I'm feeling excited again, which I was not feeling in 23.
Yeah, 2023, like I want to forget about that year.
Yeah,
It's
it was a
really,
rough year.
really tough. Yeah, we had one of the clients of ours. They raised 320 million, and
Whoa.
they filed for bankruptcy. And imagine, I don't know, raising 2-3 million and then failing. That's one part of the story. But raising 300 million and then, I mean,
Yeah.
it was sad. It was, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that you build these cost bases, and your whole team executes against a cost basis, and that money just goes crashing out the door. And it's very difficult to go back and say, okay, let's rethink this. Let's stop spending money. Let's lay off people. Like, nobody likes that. And the biggest thing is that there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt for your employees when you start to do that, which can lead to sort of a cascade, and everybody starts having rumors, and then you see your best people quitting because they're like, oh, this company's over. And then other people see your best people leave, and then they quit. And it creates a lot of upheaval. So these startups are so fragile. And especially when you pour rocket fuel into them, they become fragile and explosive, which is not a good combination.
Also, with the remote work, what do you see in terms of your startups? Do you see people like, no, let's get back to office? Do you see more hybrid, or still companies staying remotely?
Yeah, so I'm seeing two sort of stable configurations. One thing I'd say, the number one indicator of human happiness, literally, like if you list all of the things that like make people happy or unhappy, the number one indicator is the length of their commute. So the longer your commute is, the more unhappy you are. Like that's like, and that's that measure has been around for a long time. So I personally believe that anyone who thinks we're going to get people back into the office 5+ days a week for anything other than like work that requires in office work, so uh, hardware, biotech, labs, whatever, they're deluding themselves. Like there's a lot of like old founders who are like, everyone's got to go back to the office, it's better. They're fucking delusional. Like it like people do not like spending multiple hours a day sitting in a car or a bus or a train to go sit in an office. Like, and that's over. So what I'm seeing in terms of the stable configurations is I'm seeing 100% remote, because the globe is where the talent is, and that talent is cheaper, it's better, it's more motivated. And if you build a 100% remote company from the ground up, and you think about your systems and processes, and you think about documentation, and you think about communication, and you're very thoughtful about it, you're setting yourself up for the trend that is your friend, because this tool right now is the worst it will ever be. It's just going to get better. The tools for remote communication and for remote development and all the remote stuff are just going to get better and better and better. And like if you look at like the new AR goggles, like those are the first gen. Imagine that 5 generations from now, like we are going to be living in a virtual world where you and I won't be able to tell the difference between whether we're in person or whether we're basically wearing goggles. It's going to happen. And so if your company takes 10 years to build, I believe you're better off building your company for the future that is 10 years from now, rather than for the past 100 years where everyone was in person. Because you get the benefit of global talent, you get the benefit of like being a global workforce, and there's so much to be said for and you get the benefit of iterating and learning about how to do that. So like the earlier these startups are in like figuring out how to build a company that's remote, the more successful they're going to be. And so that's that for me, I'm very bullish about thoughtful entrepreneurs who are saying, let's go remote, let's be 100% remote, and let's just like execute against that. That said, a lot of companies, they still have offices, they still have people who like to go to the office, they still have a lot of old management, and I'm seeing a lot of flex. So it's 2-3 days a week in the office. Should they bite the bullet and like just go straight to remote? I don't know. It's unclear. I mean, in person is clearly still better. If you can figure out how to get all your people together in one office and you don't have anyone around the world, then like, sure. And people are willing to commute, sure. But it's almost impossible to do. So only for like the smallest startups am I seeing people who are saying, okay, we're in the office every day, we're all in the same city, and that's just the way we're going to build our company. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we also, for the employees better. They can spend time with their family. They can save costs on travel. Yeah, and then we create a more distributed world rather than get everyone in San Francisco, increase the price for rent,
Yeah.
and destroy the city. Then you have a more distributed world, more equal kind of yeah, opportunities for everyone everywhere, rather than
Yeah.
nice, cool. Thank you for that. So, moving next, what do you do as a founder? Let's say if there is, let's see, somebody's
Yeah.
commenting.
Commenting on the yeah. Yes, I
There's
agree.
yeah,
The offices are still not perfect. Yes, you are right.
and in office, usually people stay on Zoom and are
Yeah.
staying in
Yeah.
meeting booths, which is
Yeah.
kind of weird. Anyway, um, so moving next, in terms of a startup that is, let's say, was booming in years before because of the demand and the growth, all the tide race, all the boats.
Yeah.
And now, if the startup is struggling with demand, what do you see in your portfolio or from our founders? Are they pivoting, let's say,
Yeah.
quickly into AI space and trying to kind of reinvent themselves and grow again? Or they're waiting, let's say, for a better time, and because their product or their service will become available or will be more in demand, let's say, in the next year or this year.
Yeah.
What would be your advice?
So what I always recommend for startups when they're starting is to try to find the narrowest segment of self-referential, and that means customers who talk to each other, customers, who where the pain is that you can call them while they're putting their kid to bed and they want to talk to you. So for every service that you're building, there's somebody out there who really, really needs what you have. Now, let's find that somebody and find the other group of people who all go to the same conference. They're all in Vegas for some conference. They all end up at the same bar. They all talk to each other. Let's find that group where the pain is like, one of my favorite tests is the cold LinkedIn message test. Nobody reads their cold LinkedIn messages. They generally suck. They're terrible. But if you email people about something that they desperately need, they will respond to your cold LinkedIn messages. If you have a narrow enough set of customers who definitely want what you have. And so that's the test. Find that group of people, find where the pain is so high, and then figure out what it is that they need from you in order for you to deliver their product. So it may be SOC 2, it may be HIPAA, it may be there's like other things that they need to make that work that you don't have. But usually if you can identify a group of people who desperately need what you have, and you can build what they need to deliver to them, you can deliver something that suddenly starts selling itself, where people are like, oh my God, I want that and I need that. That's usually, those are small groups. Usually it's not usually a big market. Usually it's like, it's sort of like maybe a little niche. But that's how you get traction. When you're first building your company, you go find that thing that basically people are willing to basically bear the cost of the bugs in your software because it's not all figured out yet. The fact that you're a startup, so you're not a well-oiled machine. You don't have good customer service yet. All the things that you're not good at because you're small, they're willing to bear that cost because their pain is so high. And then you go from there, and then you can expand out. I think the Joffrey Moore book, Crossing the Chasm, probably one of my favorite books on this subject. And so when your growth stops, what I recommend is you go back to that, which is that like what you found is you found market traction, maybe you did, maybe you used capital to fuel your growth. You went out, you started selling to everybody. And suddenly what you found was that your sales proposition became diluted because the market shifted in terms of their demand. They no longer had free money anymore. And so they cut all these costs, and they just cut all the things that they didn't really need. And they went back to their core. And suddenly you were one of those things they didn't really need. So you've got to, from a marketing perspective, you've got to go back to the core and say, okay, we're not going to try to sell to everybody. We're going to go sell to the people who desperately need what we have. And we're going to basically go back to the place where the delta, the difference between what our product delivers and what the market delivers, is so substantial that they desperately want us to be there. I got to go back to basics. And that's about a focus problem. So you got to say, okay, no more wide scale marketing, no more wide scale sales, no more, and that's going to hurt your growth. But what it is going to do is it's going to bring you back to traction, and then you build off of traction. And so then you can say, okay, boom, we have these customers, we're executing against them. Let's go to the next one. Let's grow from here. And you can start to basically go strength to strength to strength, rather than basically just trying to like, smear the peanut butter thinner, which, is not a strategy for executing. Now, in some cases, you may have found that the market thought that your product was awesome. And then now that the market doesn't think your product is awesome, nobody thinks your product's awesome anymore, and you got nothing. That's when you pivot. But as long as you have something that like that small group of people really like, that's where I go. I go back to that group of people. So in the beginning, you do that. And then when you hit a growth slowdown because of a market shift like this, you come back to the core.
It reminds me of your saying about being a founder in a startup, being in a dark room. Maybe you will say it better, but yeah, that's kind of the founder journey of of this ups and downs and a roller coaster.
Yeah, you know it well. You're those of you who keep going back into that, what I like to say is like being a founder is like being in a dark room with Mike Tyson. And in one hand, he has an ice cream cone, and the other hand, he has his fist, and you never know which one's going to hit you in the mouth as you try to grope your way out of the room. And so you're like, oh, I see the light over there. And you're like, oh, ice cream. Oh, we're winning. And then boom, knocks you out. Yeah, so those of you who keep going back into the dark room to get beat up, I have great admiration for. Yeah, no, now that I'm on the other side of the table, I'm like, oh, so hard being a startup founder. What I like to say is it's a rocket ship ride into the walls of your own personal incompetence. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like look at Elon Musk. You'll get that great biography of Elon Musk. And I mean, God, it's just like he's like so good, right? Like, I mean, just billions and billions of dollars of value, but he's just always grinding against the wall of pain that is being a founder. It's like so hard.
Yeah, it's like this analogy of gladiator. I like it because the longer you're in the game, the higher the chances for you to be dead, basically. So it's always like fighting, grinding, and never giving up. Startups don't fail, founders quit. That's the
Yeah. You beat one bad guy, and then they send out two. You beat the two bad guys, they send out four. You beat the four bad guys, they send out guys with chariots to try to run you over. And then there's tigers trying to eat you. And it's just like, yeah, it never ends. It's you can say that you sleep as an entrepreneur, but really you don't. You just sit in that ring and you fight and you sweat and you bleed till you exit or you die. Fuck, so hard.
okay. So let's get to some audience questions to be more engaging. I have them from those that completed the forum before joining.
Cool.
So I'm going to read a couple of them, and then maybe we'll open up to live questions. So one is the initial and development phases of startup, collecting low-hanging fruits. It's not enough to calculate future projections and subsequent marketing investments. What are the investors' metrics, and why and how can we understand them? Can these different metrics be used as a filter for a round of financing? So I guess it's more pre-seed, kind of early stage when maybe you don't have any revenue.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two realities that you need to operationalize. One is the reality of actually building a company, which is identifying customers who need your product that you can afford to spend the time and energy to get to. So that's your cost of sales. Who are willing to pay you enough that it makes sense, and then how many of them are there? So, like for instance, like when Travis, they hadn't even started Uber yet, but he and I were at this party, and we were drinking beers, and he told me about the idea, and I was like, oh my God, like that's the best idea ever. You push a button, you get a car. Oh, mind blown. Now, I also said it's never going to work because the taxi lobby is going to totally fuck you. You can't win. And he was like, I'm a fighter. I'm going to win. And we had this argument for like 2 hours. And obviously he was right. But it was a good lesson for me, which is like, when something has that level of value to that many people, we push a button, get a car. I mean, like we all know how. I mean, it's amazing, right? Like, go back to the world where we have to like fucking call a taxi and wait till it gets to our house. Like, shoot me. That's what VCs get excited about. They get excited about big markets with very clear value propositions that where if you can imagine the scale that would happen, you're just like back up the truck. And I wasn't an investor at the time, so I don't know what I would have done. But like the lesson I learned is that like that's where you make all the money, and the risk of getting crushed by a taxi lobby is just part of the risk. That's the risk that you have to take. And now I'm almost 10 years into this job, and then watching my portfolio, it's what you realize is that the companies that succeed are the companies that can find that initial incremental small focused market where they can deliver real value, but who also have a gigantic end state market that could potentially be very big. And so as a founder, you kind of have to balance that, which is that you have to balance, okay, what's the small focused market where we can deliver real traction and real value and grow this business, but also What is the big market that we're shooting for that gives us the ability to deliver a venture return? Because if you don't have the ability to generate, billions of dollars of revenue, it's just not interesting to VCs, because the game we play, there's just so much risk in this game that the risk doesn't work. The math just doesn't work unless the company has the ability to get absolutely gigantic. And so that's always the tension, which is that the VCs are always focused on how big can it get, how big is the market, and the founders are often focused on what's the reality of selling this product, what's the reality of day-to-day execution, and sort of bridging that gap, both as an investor, as an entrepreneur, and figuring out how to navigate that is critical to the process.
Thank you. So moving next, another question: what is the best way to find and reach out to investors? What works for you? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could go on the internet, you could read about this question. There's thousands of answers. I'll rank order it. The best, obviously, is if you know them. Like, if you have a relationship with the investor, that makes it a lot easier, because when I'm investing in somebody that I know, like Kyle from Cruise, I'd known Kyle for 10 years when I made that investment. Like, he's amazing, and I've watched him at work, and I'm like, sweet, okay, I'm gonna give it, like, I'll invest in that guy all day long because he's a pro. And so that removes a lot of the risk as a VC, because you're looking at somebody who and you don't have to worry about, is this person going to go crazy and waste all the money? So building relationships, which take a long time, and it's not easy, and there's no easy way to do that, is the first step. Critical. It's not critical, but it makes it a lot easier. The second sort of order is warm introductions from people who know the VC. Like, if somebody sends you over, they're like, I know on LinkedIn, I think I'm connected to, like, I don't know, 15,000 people. I mean, there's a lot of people. I know a lot of people. You should be able to find a way to get to me from somebody who knows me. That by far makes it a lot easier to build a relationship. The third one is I would build a virtual relationship. So, a lot of VCs are active on Twitter. You can go on Twitter, you can engage with our threads, you can comment on our stuff, you can build a relationship with people via LinkedIn, via Twitter, via all these sort of virtual worlds. It's not the same as a real relationship, but you can build a relationship, and you can start doing that now, start doing that today. And over time, like, I have people who have been in my Twitter threads for a long time. I know who they are, and when they reach out, I pay attention to them because they put in a lot of effort, and I've gotten to watch them. I've learned from the way that they think, and that is a scalable, effective way to build a relationship. But if you do that by adding value. Add comments, add ideas that are interesting, that are thoughtful. Don't just go in there and, like, just sort of spam. Like, if you add value, you'll find that basically those relationships can start to develop. And then the last way is obviously, like, cold outreach. The problem is I get, I don't know, probably 100 cold emails a day from people who have a startup that they're trying to get funded. And I mean, literally, my eyes start bleeding after a while going through them. And so, like, the amount of brain space that I spend thinking about those is small. My attention is, I do that at the end of the day. I'm already tired. I'm like, and I'm just, like, going through them. I don't, very, very, very few times have I ever engaged in that deal flow. It's just because it's just like, hey, whatever I do, it ends up being pretty bad, pretty low quality. So that's the worst way by far.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll take some live questions. Let's see if there was one question from Simon: can non-US companies tap into these funding streams? I guess. And there's one more from Elena, similar question: how US investors look at startups legally based in Europe if they're interested to invest.
So yeah, I do invest in European companies. But the thing is, right now, there's so much money from European investors who are trying to invest in European companies because of the EU effectively funding a lot of the VC firms and giving them really, really awesome capital. I would say that if you can't raise money from European investors, you probably have something more fundamentally wrong with the business. because there's a lot of European investors who are looking to deploy capital in Europe. So that's usually going to be your first rounds. You'll find that like Series A, Series B, certainly Series C, the US investors start to show up and really start to pay attention. But the earliest rounds generally tend to be either investors you know really well. So people, if you have a relationship with the US investor, then they'll lean in and they'll write a check early, or it will be somebody who's local, who knows your market better and who can help you at the beginning process. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of US firms that have opened offices in Europe and people are spending time. Yeah, it's Europe is definitely growing as a tech region, and I mean I spend a lot of time there. It's I mean plus it's fun to visit, so it's a good deal, but it's still harder. I find it harder to invest in Europe. Like for instance, I also will not invest in any German companies just because of the German government's absolutely horrible system for I mean, it's literally the worst legal system I've ever encountered. So if you're a German company, but you need to get your government to change, like unbelievable.
Do you approach a little bit different valuations? Let's say if it's a UK company, there's another question, a follow-up question from Elena, or
Generally, the
US.
further you are away from Silicon Valley, the lower your relative valuation is, just because there's more risk and uncertainty, and you don't have the level of familiarity with the variables. So, if you're based here, you have to pay the costs that are here. You have to deal with all of the things that make it hard to operate here. So the valuation, you probably don't even get a net gain because your costs are so much higher operating in Silicon Valley. Like you have a higher valuation, but you have higher costs. So like you probably lose. But if you are based here, you will find you end up with a higher valuation. And the further you are away, metaphorically, not miles wise, the lower the valuation is as people sort of discount that out.
So there is a question from Eugene. Sam Altman said there will be soon a $1 billion company, which would you have been unimaginable without AI, but now might happen. Do you, Zach, believe that? Or still great tech companies will need hundreds of tech people to become unicorns?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I think he's being a little dramatic. At the end of the day, if you have a $1 billion company, you have customers. If you have customers, you need customer support. AI chatbots are still not as good as a human being that can take you to dinner and can listen to your concerns and can solve for them. You end up needing a lot of things as companies grow, like legal. Like legal is a real thing. People sue you, like whether or not they're justified or not, they do sue you. Sales continues to be something that humans like to interact with other humans. Marketing tends to be something that requires people who are smart about marketing. Like, engineering is, chatbots have not figured out how to scale, around the world and solve all the problems. So like, in theory, yes. In practice, I don't know. I'm not holding my breath. I don't even know if I know a single person $100 million revenue business, or even valuation business. They probably exist, but I don't know of them.
Richard is asking, our company is using hybrid AI to create a new breed of predictive analytics for talent. It drives future-facing analytics to address $1 trillion market. While this type of innovation can be a revolution in the sector, HR tech is not sexy, over-invested, and unattractive to most investors. Do you have a suggestion on how to break through this investor resistance?
I mean, HR tech is challenging. They don't have a lot of money. Like you said, there's a lot of startups that are in there. It's not a market that I am a huge expert in. So I don't know for that market what the secret is. The one thing I generally say is like, I like to think about like the startups doing new things that are actually new is what I like to try to find. I like to find people who are doing interesting new stuff. And so whenever you can articulate, when you can describe your startup as, oh, we're using AI to do analytics for HR, I can tell you 100 other startups that are doing the same thing. Like that's, and so when that happens, you can think about it like Bayesian statistics. In Bayesian statistics, you have the probability of event occurring. So probability of the success that the startup is going to be worth billions of dollars, you know. And then you have the base set, which is all of the other startups that have gone before and how many of them are worth $1 billion. And in Bayesian statistics, you look at the probability of the event, and then you look at the probability of the base set, and then you bring those together to figure out the actual probability of likelihood of success. And so when there's hundreds of startups that have come before you that have not achieved much in terms of an outcome, or thousands or tens of thousands, even if you think you have a 99% chance of success, in reality, your chance of success is much, much lower because the base set basically dilutes your probability. And so when I look at crowded markets like that, and especially people who are doing something that everyone else is doing, even if the founder is incrementally better than other founders, even if they're smarter, even if they're harder working, I tend to discount that substantially and say, okay, not all that exciting. Whereas if you're doing something totally new, they're like, what the hell is this? This is new. This is weird. Nobody knows what this is. That's when I get excited because then it's like, that's where you get those. That's generally where the big outcomes occur too. It's people doing things that are totally new, or that, like when Travis started Uber, that everyone thought was crazy. Like, you're crazy. That's not going to work. Those are the things that are exciting. The things that are like when Bitcoin first started, like, that's so dumb. That's not going to work. I was one of those people. I was like, that's never going to work. And yeah, now look at it. Like that's what you want to look for. You want to look for stuff where like, oh, that's not going to work. Like that's too hard. That's too like too risky. Too like, and then that's generally where the big outcomes occur.
Like contrarian, but right. That's this intersection.
The great thing about venture, you don't even have to be right because you can, because the outcomes are so, I mean, think about it, Uber, right? So one of my friends, when Uber was, when Travis was first raising money, Travis said he would give any investor free black car rides for life, in exchange for an investment. So my buddy was like, well, I wish I could get like at least half my investment back. So he put 25K into Uber at the very first round. I mean, he made thousands of times his money. So if you think about that as a strategy, if let's say you had a bag of pennies and every time you bet a penny, you could get thousands of pennies back, what would you do? You just freaking just throw them around like a crazy man. You just bet on everything because the returns are so big in these power law scenarios. And you know, no one has the bandwidth to make, you know, thousands of good, smart investments. But the optimal strategy is to, and it's hard to find stuff that actually is like truly has the ability to get there. But the optimal strategy is to make a lot of bets and be willing to lose because you know that the winners make up for the losers.
Yeah. Richard is giving a follow-up question about the fact that he's using a hybrid AI. So no one is using that.
Okay.
That
I'm not an
example.
expert in hybrid AI, so maybe.
Yeah, but I think what you said, Zach, I think it's mostly about what you're building is new and the market that you're creating is new. Like in the case of Uber, it just was something totally different than was used before, or Airbnb or Facebook, all of these companies, like big outcomes, because it was a weird idea, or it was like maybe another social media, another, you know, people won't stay in strangers' home and stuff like that. So
yeah. Yeah, I think the weirdness of an idea. So I'll give you an example of an investment I made. I knew these guys, and they had an SDR as a service company, and the company went out of business. And they were the designer on the team is like, I'm going, fuck this, I'm piecing out, I'm gonna go at a paint and like just sort of decompress. And he goes to Goa, and he's really into mushroom tea. And unfortunately, mushroom tea tastes pretty bad. It's really good for you. Like it's like if you want to stop drinking coffee, you should drink mushroom tea. It will literally, you can stop drinking coffee. But it at the time, it didn't taste very good. So he comes back, and he had gotten into the Goa chai tea blending and added up all these different sort of like ingredients like cardamom and keiko and chai tea with his mushroom tea to make like this mix. And his friends were like, oh, that's pretty good. You should sell that. So he makes like a Shopify page, and he starts selling it. And the first month he sells like $5,000 worth of tea. Next month he sells like $10,000 worth of tea. And they reach out. They're like, Zach, you got to help. And I was like, I don't know anything about mushroom tea. Like, I don't know anything about tea. I don't know anything about consumer. I don't know anything about CPG. I'm like, I'm not, I'm an idiot here. The next month they sell like $20,000 of tea. They're like, dude, you got to help. I'm like, all right, let me help. So I introduced them to like some CPG guys who I know, who I've co-invested with, and they're like, oh, we should do this deal. And I'm like, I don't know anything about mushroom tea. I'm an idiot. The next month they sell $40,000 in tea. So we got this crazy exponential growth. And the other thing is that what's interesting about this mushroom tea is that some people hate it. Oh my God, they're like, this is the worst thing ever. I hate this. But some people really like it. And that for me was the aha moment where I was like, okay, here's this thing that's growing like crazy that some people really hate, but some people really love. And whenever you see those like strong, like discrepancies between love and hate, those tend to be an indication that something interesting is happening here. So I helped lead the round, and we put together a round for the company, and the company called Mudwater. So they 100 million in sales, global product. I mean, like super successful. I mean, I still don't know anything about mushroom tea or CPG or consumer, but yeah, it ended up being a great outcome. And so generally the things that people really hate for me is this great flag that I tend to go for, because when people hate things, they usually don't hate them because the things themselves are bad. They hate things because they're different and new, and people like normalcy. They like consistency. They don't like new stuff. And so whenever like for instance, when Teslas came out, everyone's like, I fucking like, some people love them. If you own a Tesla, like, I love it. And so like, I fucking hate Tesla. Like that's a hint. It's like something new that people hate. That oftentimes is something to get excited about, because it actually is new. I'm trying to think of what a good example of things people hate right now is. Yeah. The stronger people hate something, the more interesting it is.
That's a good one. We got another 10 minutes and a
Yeah.
couple of more questions.
Ooh.
Eugene
Someone
said
did
Zoom
Zoom
calls.
calls. Yes. Yes. That's reasonable. I understand that. So it's also very powerful. It works. So there you go.
The Skype calls, or uh, what was before? Was it? Even forgot the name. Eric, the founder of Zoom, worked for that company, Citrix, or
Oh
some.
yeah. Oh, those were, that was yeah, that
It
was
was really
painful.
bad. But
Yeah.
let's go with a fire kind of quick question
Yeah.
answer with what we got. So, can you chat about pre-seed versus seed and revenue, or is just about founders at both stages?
Yeah. So the way I break it down, everyone breaks it down different. Is pre-seed is for people who are investing in you because they know you, or because you've done something that's substantially successful enough over your lifetime that they can invest in you based on your track record. So you were a PM at a big company, or you started a startup, or you've generated traction. So something that gets you cash before you have anything. And so if they know you, they're investing in you as a person, friends, family, that group of people, and then or they know of you, or that you've got enough of a background they can give you capital. Seed is, we have traction, so we have a thing. This thing is in market, and it's generating some indication that people like it and love it, but it has not yet started scaling like crazy. We don't yet have that sort of like month over month growth rate. What I like to say is like, it's a qualitative bet at seed, which is we're betting on the quality of the traction, the quality of the product, the quality of the delta between other products. Like, but we don't yet have a quantitative measurement where month over month metrics enable you to really extend the line and be like, okay, here's where this thing is going to go. As soon as you have that, as soon as you have metrics, then there's a lot of specialist VC firms that will come in and they can look at those metrics and then make investment decisions based on them. And that's seed. That Series A is, that's the point that you have the metrics that people can invest
in. Yes, and Eugene is asking, are we going to witness crash the same as .com 2000? How people fall for NFT and WeWork?
I don't know. I mean, humans are crazy, right? They do weird, dumb stuff over and over and over again. I mean, yeah, if I knew what the market was going to do tomorrow, I would be trading Wall Street, and it would be. Unfortunately, I do not know. We'll see what happens.
Mihai is asking, what are the risks for the company in having an investor or multiple investors or no investors, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's useful to have as many high quality people at the table as you can. So when Ahmad started Mercury, for example, one of the things that he did was he both got really high quality institutional investors, so Andreessen, CRV, I'm not blanking on who did the last round. I'll remember in a second. But he also went out and basically got a bunch of early stage, or not early stage, a bunch of entrepreneurs to also invest in the round, because that sort of created this group of people who could give him specific feedback and advice, could help him with distributing his product so they could reach out to their friends and start spreading it around. And they also served as a counterweight to the VCs, because sometimes VCs don't make good decisions. And it's helpful if you have a lot of other smart, experienced, like established people on your cap table who can push back and be like, no, 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 that's not a good idea. Here's why. And so having that sort of like that group, that community around you is really helpful. It takes a village to start a company, and if you can get a bunch of people on your cap table to join your village, like you're much more likely to be successful. You know, on the other hand, that takes time and energy, and so like you don't want to like waste all your time like pitching VCs. You know, douchebag investors are hard enough to deal with as it is, let alone like having to go deal with lots of them. So you got to balance that, but like on in general, I would say more is better.
Got it. Fangming asks about the appetite of investors. Let's say, what is your view on VC investing in the AI-enabled application? Example, food operation transformation. I don't know what this means. What is your top three areas of investment in 2024? Do you look
So
at that? Yeah.
I'm not a thesis driven investor. Um, I generally do B2B software. I don't do consumer unless I know the founder and they drag me into it. I'll mud water. I generally do sectors where I am like somewhat smart in the space, which is not a lot. And I'm looking for new stuff. Like that's where I get excited, is new stuff. Um, so I don't have a thesis. I'm looking for entrepreneurs to come to me and be like, here's this new thing. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a new thing. And then together we can go do amazing things. But that's generally what I'm looking for. That's what I get excited about.
And I think we got the last question from Elena. You mentioned about on your profile on AngelList that per type of investments are those where you can spend a great deal of time with the entrepreneur and build this long lasting relationship. Um, how do you choose these entrepreneurs?
Um, it's a good question. Uh, I deal with entrepreneurs every day. And every now and then I meet people, I'm like, this is cool. And I get excited about them as a person. And then I find that they continue to build products and they continue to do interesting things, and I can watch and learn from them. They share with me. So they send me their updates, and they're reaching out with, what's going on with the company. And so I can kind of watch and learn as they grow. And then, I find that at some point I'm like, oh, hold on a second, there's something there. And I go back and I look at it again and again and again, and I'm like, oh, there is something here. But it's very organic. It's not formulaic. I don't have a process for that. It's just, yeah, it's sort of like the people we have in our lives, right? You meet people, and some people they don't stick, and some people they do, and some people you're 10 years later, you're talking to them, you're still talking to them. I mean, who would have known after that first trip to Moldova that we'd be friends 10 years later? So yeah, I mean,
I
I don't know.
appreciate
Who
this
knows how it works?
friendship. And yeah, it was great to have that visit back then, 10 years ago. Now having this webinar and for the futures as well. By the way, are you visiting London anytime soon or planning to visit Europe?
No trip to London. I'm headed to the Middle East and Africa on Saturday, so I'll be there for a couple weeks. And I don't have anything scheduled for London yet, but I'll let you know. Yeah, gotta
Sounds
go
great.
go grab a great lunch again.
Will be amazing, Zach. I appreciate your time. It was great meeting you and great insights. I think a lot of learnings for everyone. We're recording this, so we'll share after that. And yeah, um,
Cool. Thanks for doing it. I appreciate it.
thank you.